every tree Tuesday.
We will go ahead and call to order the Wednesday, February 19th, City Solon regular council meeting. That will start with pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Duncan.
Here.
Harlan here. Gabriel. Here. Kramer. Here. Whitehead.
Here.
Ask them what they
I'm
can see.
good.
Our civility pledge, we pledge to promote civility by listening, being respectful of others, and acknowledging that we are all striving to support and improve our community. Perfecting and approval of the agenda. Any changes? Yeah.
No changes.
I'll move to perfect and approve the agenda.
Second. Duncan.
Yes.
Harlan.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Kramer. Yes. Whitehead.
Yes.
All right, that takes us to citizen speak. This is a time on the agenda. If anybody would like to speak on any non-agenda items this evening. That takes us to consent agenda. So we have approval minutes from February 5th, 2025 regular meeting, approval of the list of bills, treasurer's report and transfers, billing permits. I believe there's one that Susie sent over. And before we do that, I'll turn it over for the Spartan Dash for the event application. I'll hand it over to you ladies.
My name is Jill Schmidt and I'm here on behalf of Lakeview and SIS PTO fundraiser Spartan Dash. Spartan Dash is a family-oriented fun run with obstacles. All the proceeds raised will be allocated back into the schools to support things like teacher discretionary funds, field trips, and educational materials. We are requesting your continued support by granting us permission once again to host Spartan Dash at SRNA. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Any questions over there?
Thank you for everything you do. My kids love it every single year. My kids loved it when we did it too.
Yeah,
Great.
same.
Hopefully we'll have some more weather this year. All right, with that, do we have a motion to consent the agenda?
I move to consent the agenda. Second.
Duncan?
Yes.
Harlan?
Yes.
Gabriel?
Yes.
Kramer?
Yes.
Whitehead.
Yes.
Takes us down to the city engineer report. Dave?
Yes, good evening. A few things to update. We've been looking over construction drawings for Trail Ridge, parts 3A and 3B. Those will be the next two phases that will be underway. So we should have a plan for council for approval shortly. Prairie Rose Lane, we took bids on that. I'll be reporting on that later in the agenda. Lakefield Elementary parking improvements will likely be taking place here in the near future. We had a meeting with them earlier, looking over the site plan and doing some coordination with that Chapel intersection that we might be able to bring some concepts for council to look at realignment there. So more to come on that. Griesel's North property. They did submit some preliminary information on a traffic study, turn lanes on the highway that we're looking through, and gave them some comments on the preliminary plat to take a look at. So we should see something on that before too long as well. And then Jordan Creek Church has some things on the agenda tonight that we've been working with them on as well. For the wastewater plant, handed out a revised schedule and wanted to just talk through that a little bit. The lighter dates are ones that are already passed. Darker dates are the ones that we're working towards. So we have the anti-degradation analysis that we're working on currently, and hope to have that to DNR in March. So right around the corner. And then there's a public comment period and the public hearing is required on that before we get to the facility plan, which is the step where we go through the options from the anti-deg and put forth what we want to do with the project, get all that outlined and submitted to DNR for the intended use plan application, which is our funding for SRF. So we're getting close to that. Next few steps will get us right there. And then we have a design period that's going to take probably 18 months to 2 years to get through that with the size of the facility, and then a couple of years of construction. So you see that at the end of this is July of 2029. That's our compliance date for, our schedule, and, where we're at now is we're just trying to finish up on the anti-dag, some of the cost estimating, so hope to have that wrapped up here in the next couple of weeks and have something before council for review. Any questions? That's all I have, Dan.
All right, thanks, Dave. Kevin, nothing? Nothing? All right. Rod, takes us to you, Johnson County Supervisor, Rod Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I've got just a few quick things. We continue to investigate exactly what's going on at the intersection of 140th and Highway 1, where, as you know, we've had some pretty serious accidents. Continue to work with the Iowa Department of Transportation there, and I believe Solon Fire has been involved in those conversations as well. Second thing I wanted to mention, just like you folks, we've been working on budget. And as I'm sure you've experienced, it's fairly tight, but I think we're getting close to finish there. One of the bigger items in the budget is some unfortunately necessary repairs at the current jail. As you know, we've been talking with the city of Iowa City about some kind of joint law enforcement project that we hope to be able to come talk to you about sometime soon. That will, we need to spend this money on the current facility, whether or not we do the bigger project, which is unfortunate. It's a lot of money. So, kind of a bummer in your budget there. And the last thing I wanted to mention, just a bit of good news. I think, I know a number of you have worked with, Brad Friedhoff, the interim conservation director. Brad, as you know, was instrumental in helping with a lot of the trails that come into and around Solon. Brad, as of last night, became the official conservation director and can lose the interim title. So congratulations to Brad. That is all I had for you folks, unless you folks have any questions for me.
Thanks for joining tonight, Rod.
You
Thank
bet.
you,
Thank
Rod.
you. And if you don't mind, I'm going to cut out.
All right. That takes us down to the public hearing. Public hearing to adopt plans, specs, form a contract, and estimate of cost for the Prairie Rose Lane reconstruction comment or project. We have a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll move to open public hearing. Second.
Duncan,
Yes.
Farley.
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Kramer. Yes. Whitehead.
Yes.
We're now in public hearing. Kim?
This is to address the pavement deterioration on the east end of Prairie Rose Lane, from approximately Prairie Rose Place. There's two driveways for that development. We'd be starting at the west driveway and going to the east as we get to Windflower Lane. There's roughly 300 feet of pavement that, as you recall, we talked about this a while back. The cement mixture that was brought in for that was during a period where there was a shortage, and that has some issues with the quality of the pavement. The joints are really deteriorating quickly, so we put out bids for that, and I'll report on those later. But this project is to replace that section of pavement to address that deterioration.
Questions? Comments over any of this?
Mr.
With that, no questions or comments? We have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close public hearing.
Duncan,
Yes.
Farley.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yeah.
Kramer. Yes. Whitehead.
Yes.
Takes us down to new business, resolution 2511, adopting the plan specs, form of contract and estimate of cost for the Prairie Rose Lane reconstruction project. Any additional discussion?
The estimate of cost was $95,000 for the base bid, and everything is in order for a standard public bid letting process. So plans and specs were on file. Everything should be good. Just need a resolution to accept them.
I move to approve resolution 2511.
I'll second.
Duncan,
Yes.
Farley.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yeah.
Kramer. Yes. Whitehead.
Yes.
Takes us to Item 13, resolution 2512, making award of the construction bid for Prairie Rose Lane reconstruction project. Dave?
We took bids on February 13th last week, and we had 8 bidders, which was pretty good turnout for a relatively short project. The bids range from $91,262 for the alternate bid, which is concrete, all the way up to $128,974, which was the base bid for asphalt. So we're recommending award All American Concrete was low with the alternate to do this as a concrete reconstruction at $91,262, and recommending we award the contract to them for that amount.
Any questions or comments on that?
I'll move to approve resolution 2512.
Second. Yes.
Farland.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Whitehead.
yes,
Takes us to item 14, resolution 2513, the Fringe Area Preliminary and Final Plat, Dora Acres Edition.
This is an application that's come to Johnson County and they forwarded to the city for review and comment. This is in the Fringe Area 2 area, so city approval is not required. But review and comment is part of the process. This is in an area that's fairly removed from the city limits. Dave Scheckinger has reviewed it, has recommended the city approve or waive review. It's not gonna impact really the city in any way. So your options in this case would be to approve or waive review of the preliminary and final plat.
Thoughts? Don't have any issue with approving. I don't either. I move to resolution 2513 and recommend approval.
Second.
Duncan.
Yes.
Farland.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Whitehead.
yes,
Takes us to item 15, the Jordan Creek Church concept.
I'll get started on this, Mayor. This is a conversation we've been having with the city council for a while. Jordan Creek is interested in building a new church on the property just west of the trail on Highway 382. The property is owned by Bob Upmeyer, who's here this evening. And when we first brought this to the city council, we had shared that this is what we would call an out of order development because of the land between the current city limits and where the location is that the church would like to build. And ask for some direction from the city council on how you would like staff to approach that from a planning perspective. And it was the council's direction that you would like to see all the property between the current city limits and the new church site to be annexed. So with that mindset, we've been reviewing the various site plans and concepts that the church's designers have presented, and we've kind of used that framework as we've looked at the site and how to proceed as far as annexation and development of this site. When we develop out of order, the code has some language of how we need to approach that. And Dave will talk a little bit about that and about why that's important for planning and for infrastructure purposes. It gets a little complicated because it's not just the Upmeyer property. There's a couple corner parcels that are gonna need to be addressed. And again, that's on your big map that Dave will walk through. But what we've done as we've reviewed both how to approach the annexation, because currently some of the parcels have one parcel has land on both sides of the road. So in that that's in more than one parcel. So we have to separate and create two parcels. The ones to the north won't come into the city limits, but the ones to the south. And there's some complications with that, and we're working through those. I mean, they're not they're not obstacles, they're just make it a little more complicated than a typical annexation. So that said, we're working through that, with Bob's, engineer, Hart Frederick, and, we're getting closer. But what has come to be is the fact that we've been working the last few years, Dave and I and city staff with MPO of Johnson County to help us figure out the arterial roads as we grow as a city. And so that's one of the lenses we always look at when we are looking at new development in these, undeveloped areas, is where the road's gonna go first. And so we met with both Cole and Lauren, who are on the Planning and Growth Committee, and kind of shared a couple ideas that, we had looked at as far, how do we get connection from High Ridge Trail in Trail Ridge Estates to out. I mean, it has to go somewhere. Is it gonna go over to Polk? Is it gonna go up to Highway 382? And we kind of worked through the pros and cons and evaluated how to best get an access, because that's the intent. There's gonna be an access at some point that needs to come through that area. And it was our staff recommendation that access does come up through and connect to Highway 382. And Cole and Lauren, agreed with that. And so that's the lens that we've been taking as we continue forward. So what that then creates is, we don't need a road all the way through there right now. How much of a road do we need for Jordan Creek to proceed with their project? Who pays for the road? Typically in an orderly development, the developer takes the roads and the infrastructure to the end of their property so the next developer can hook on. And so because it's out of order, it creates, these questions. We need the road, but how much of a road do we need? Who pays for the road? Do we need the road right now? And then that same conversation happens with water and sewer. So I just wanted to give you just the broad view. And then of course, there's representatives here from Jordan Creek and Bob Uppmeyer's here. I'm not sure if you all have anybody on Zoom.
I'm not aware.
Okay. And then Dave, of course, if you want to start just kind of, take it, you can get into the details a little more. I just wanted to give kind of an overview of where the Lens staff have been looking at the project for. And it's a very exciting project for the community. Just a little complicated, but not definitely doable. We just need to, need some direction, as well as Jordan Creek needs some direction from the council where there's flexibilities, so we know how to approach it.
Thanks, Kim. So as Kimmy stated, normally when we see a property come in and it's going to develop, the roads would be put in ahead of time, the utilities would be put in, their lots would be created, we would develop a lot. So all of that stuff is available when we purchase the lot. And that cost for that infrastructure is baked into that lot price. In this situation where we're looking to develop a relatively large area removed from the city by a short distance and the infrastructure isn't put in place, and we're looking at considerations such as hooking on to the Gallery Acres line for water, and if sewer is not readily available, potentially looking at the option is septic is something that we'd be willing to consider from a cost analysis standpoint. If it's significantly more expensive to get sewer up there, and there's no intent to develop the rest of that Uppmeyer property anytime soon, then that infrastructure just ages. We don't get use of it. We don't get the connection fees. Somebody has to front that cost. So when we have that discussion, the reason that this comes up is that that infrastructure isn't put in place ahead of time, and the lots aren't created with that already there. So some of the asks that are there are with respect to the sewer. We would have to go from the end of High Ridge Trail. That's a pretty good distance with the road, with the sewer, with the water to get over there from the end of Trail Ridge. And really, there's only about one tier of lots on either side of that roadway that would be considered good developable property. The rest of that is sensitive area, wetlands. People that have driven by see the ponds that are there, the trees, the grasses that are growing out there. And I think Upmeyers have a desire to try to maintain that to the extent possible. So we're not looking at taking all of that out and developing it. So the road fits in there about one lot width north of the trail, and then there's about a lot depth on the north side of the roadway that gets up to that green space. So there isn't a lot of variation on where we can put that road as far as along the trail. And there really aren't too many spots to come up. If the church is going to be there, they've got the wetlands just to the east, it sort of fits in there between those two. So that was how that was developed. But again, if there isn't any intention to do that development of that larger Upmeyer parcel anytime soon, and the roadway isn't going to go in, we're trying to figure out how much of that do we put in along the church frontage. Does it go to the left of the lot? Does it just go to the point where they can get into the parking lot and we just stop it there and leave right of way on the rest of the property so we can get through there at such point that this does develop in the future? But all this goes into that planning that we're talking about. When we look at the long range planning, we need to make sure that those utilities and the roadway can go through. When we looked at options, as Kenny mentioned, Polk Avenue was one. We would have to cross the trail, and then we've got the Gaddis property, which may or may not develop anytime soon. So if that's not really a viable option from a development standpoint, it's not annexed into the city, and it creates a conflict with that trail. We would have to get permission from Johnson County, and maybe not the best location to put that in. We felt it was better to do it as it's shown on this drawing. Now, as we go through the annexation process, the Upmeyer property on the south side of 382, we split that. So we have the south side of the highway that is going to be in city jurisdiction, and the north side that's going to be in county jurisdiction. So we get into that agreement that we have to do with maintenance. And then if we wanted to improve the roadway, we have to come up with some sort of a 28E for that as well, if we're only bringing half in. So there's some complications there, but we've dealt with those in the past. The two red parcels, if we were to do annexation to try to get to a clean line, the trail being the south side and 382 being the north side of the annexation, those two red triangles are the small parcels that we would have to bring in. And that's not much different than when we dealt with that in Trail Ridge. There were some properties that were outside of the immediate project, but we wanted to get it cleaned up, and we have the 80/20 ability to bring those in without having to go through involuntary annexation. So that gives an overview of what we're looking at. I think there may be some folks from the church that want to talk a little bit about the concept and what they're asking of the city. But that's where we approached it to look at how do we do this, knowing that this may not be traditional, that it all gets the infrastructure and street put in and then the lot sold and everything progresses as normal. There's going to be some things out of order in this request that we'll have to deal with.
With the two parcels, that would need to be annexed as well as the Barter properties, any preliminary discussions been had with either of them as far as willingness and everything?
Have had discussions with both. Generally, their position is they don't have an issue with it, but they're fine as they are. So typically in this situation, it would be the Upmeyers would create all the documents needed for the annexation. But we would need both BARDA and C to sign an application, which we've done that. But typically the Upmeyers are creating the annexation exhibit anyway, so they would just include those parcels. And then there would need to be similar to the Upmeyer property. C property is one parcel, the bigger parts on the north side. So that would have to be created into two parcels, and that would be part of the parcel preparation needed for the annexation anyway. So there should be no cost to them because that's already being done through the annexation process, but we do need their permission to annex.
Questions before we turn it over for additional comments? Bob, is there anything you want to run through before you contact?
Well, I just appreciate the council's work on all this. As Candy mentioned, it's a round hole in a square peg. And it's the family's intent not to develop the wetland. It's a unique piece of landscape, and so I know that throws a little bit of wrench in the works, and we appreciate you working with us to see what we can do to get around that. But our intent is not to disperse the wetlands. Yet accommodate the church and as we can accommodate the city as well.
Questions or comments for Bob?
Yeah, I really didn't have anything prepared. We're excited about the project, but we also want to make sure we're working with everybody we need to work with. We want to make sure we have a good relationship overall and how we work forward with the city.
Are you with the church or who are you with?
I'm with the church.
With church?
Yeah.
From the conversations that we've had, really with both of them, just your approach and partnership with the city, as we work through the planning, again, it's not exactly, real clear exactly how we should do everything, as far as standard process, a little bit out of order with it, but again, really, appreciate your willingness and, efforts to coordinate with the city.
Yeah.
Sure. Any action or anything?
Well,
you think
I
on?
guess I think what the direction Jordan Creek was kind of looking for is they obviously have a budget for the project. And if that budget includes having to put in part of the street, then their budget changes significantly. So I think Dave was gonna kind of talk through the pros and the cons of the difference of putting in at least part of the street now versus holding off putting the street in and just having it be a church access. There's pros and cons to that. And then the cost of putting in a street, who funds that? You know, typically that's a developer. But we don't really have a developer in this. I mean, we have a site plan. And so is that gonna be, is the expectation that whatever amount of street is going to be put in, is that gonna be the expectation that that's Jordan Creek? It's not Meyer family, it's the city of Solon, it's some kind of shared, or it's gonna be, you know, help paid for by the future developer through connection fees at some point. So I think those are some of the questions that the church is asking us that we just don't have the authority to answer those questions, you know, as far as what the council will or won't allow, or as far as, you know, that street going in, is the city even interested in considering discussion about any kind of contribution, or at least helping get it in and then recouping those ins from fees later? Want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of putting, you know, at least putting in a dead end street now versus waiting?
Sure, so if we don't put any street in now and they put the driveway in and we do come back in the future and want to put that in, that creates some problems from a grading standpoint, from a coordination standpoint. We have to put in a way for them to get to the street eventually. The grading that we would have to do to fill that ditch could potentially be different than what they do for their driveway, which requires us to do additional work in order to get it fit in later. Whereas if it's put in up front with the church with the intention of extending the, and that's all taken out of consideration. We don't have to contend with the traffic coming into the church for events and services, because the approach would already be done and the roadway would be the driveway for them. So there are some things that create some additional costs in the future if we allow it to be done one step at a time, as opposed to dealing with it now. As far as the lower portion of this, I wanted to point out that if we were to try to extend High Ridge Trail to the west and there wasn't an intention to connect here, we have a limitation from a safety standpoint of 500 feet on cul-de-sac streets. And that doesn't get us much over halfway from the edge of the subdivision over once the future North Street is in there. That creates an area where might limit what we can do if we do a cul-de-sac in there. Then the rest of this is pretty much going to have to be laid out with lots, because we aren't connecting the streets and we have to fill the gaps with larger lots. So if that's not how we want to have it developed, we want to have the ability to extend this, we need to preserve the right of way. To Cammie's point, do we have them just do it down to the edge of where their driveway comes in so we don't have the conflicts in the future? Or do we have it do along the frontage of the property? Because if we don't, then we have to try to come back and collect costs later. But without the east side developing, it gets to be a little bit difficult. You know, from a special assessment standpoint with agriculture, we can't can't assess it, so then it's a cooperative effort in trying to get the adjacent property owner or in this case, that Myers to contribute something towards it for future development. And again, if they don't have any intention of developing, that's pretty difficult to get them to commit to it. So, you know, there's some challenges with it. Again, it's out of order. It creates those challenges, and we just need to make some decisions, knowing full well all the nuances to the layout that they have proposed.
My initial thoughts on whether we do the street or a driveway. I guess, take that back, is we look at a street, one, I feel like any of the costs should not come through the city with it. I'm not a fan of the city paying for development. I would not be supportive of the city paying for the street. With that, understand it, there's no intentions to develop. It's a different scenario, and want to make sure that we don't have a ton of costs now that are then kind of wasted, and then there's more expenses in the future. So I want to be very mindful of the budget at the same point, with that. And so potentially, you know, as we look at, is there an option that could be done now that would not, if that through street happens in the future, it wouldn't feel like, you know, we're tearing everything up to then pay to redo that, because I'm sure there are a lot of moving parts with that. But as far as just like a cost standpoint, whether we go with a street or a driveway or the church, I feel like it's something that I don't have interest in the city paying for. This is, I view this as development with it, and I want to be supportive of the city paying for a street and other developments. I don't know, thoughts.
I would lean that direction as well. Thought is I would like the street to go in just so that we're keeping our options open. It's there if we're not doing construction later on, which is more than likely going to be more expensive later than it is now. I'm willing to be flexible if there's some way to recoup costs for the city as we go forward through fees of some sort. But my preference would be throw those in on the front end, and we just don't have to worry about that in the future.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I don't think that it should cost our taxpayers money to build that street. Furthermore, we're gonna have to do a 20/80 agreement between this property or the end of this property now and where the end of Trail Ridge is. So it's gonna take more manpower to plow that as well and maintain it. So just I don't think that I think it's a good concept, but I don't think it's something that should cost our taxpayers money.
I agree, John.
I agree also, John.
Same.
As far as the street or the driveway with that, as far as direction for it, what are the thoughts of Cole? You were thinking that a street makes more sense now, don't do it later. Is that where everybody else is thinking, or what? Is there a preference on that?
I guess I'm at the point where I just don't see. It's a good concept. I just don't know that we need to be annexing more property at this point. That's where I'm at.
Steve or Lauren, any thoughts?
Go ahead, Steve.
I don't have any problem with that annexing, but I understand what John's saying. Whether we need to or not is a whole other thing, but how does that look for the church if we don't annex? How do they proceed then? Or as the cities, does our city staff think we need to annex to do this?
Well, and that goes back to the questions that we had for council. That's why we asked for that direction months ago, so that we can best approach it. And the feedback we got unanimously was that does need to be annexed.
I thought.
Yeah, so what was shared with me at our last meeting with Jordan Creek Church is that they cannot bear the cost of putting a street in. And so I don't know what it would do to the project and the concept if they were
Okay.
required. One of the things that I asked is what portion of their project is dedicated toward the drive? And maybe those costs could be diverted toward the street. And that's just, so we have some idea. And then I didn't want to task, I don't know whose task it is to go and seek estimates for the cost of the drive. I really didn't feel it was the city. I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to task our city engineer to go find those numbers. I feel like those numbers should at least be borne by the project. And then the council would have those numbers to make some better decisions. We're also facing kind of a similar situation with sewer because for sewer to get from here to here, that's a lot of money that a developer would recoup with houses. And so they have inquired about a septic system. And of course, that would require approval from the city council and public health. So again, we're kind of in these question areas that as staff, you know, we're not authorized to make decisions, but do need some direction on what the council will and won't support so we can keep going and doing research. And what I'm hearing tonight is that there's some flexibility on the access. We need some numbers for you to better make that decision, but at least it gives some initial feedback to the project so we kind of know what direction to go. And then I would also extend that conversation to utilities. And to see kind of what your thoughts are on utilities, because the main issues are this, you know, we're now, as John shared, we're sharing that road now with Johnson County and we're going to have additional maintenance and snow removal. What are your thoughts on the utilities? The water is across the street. It would not be in the city limits. So that line would not be annexed like it was with Trail Ridge. So it'd be servicing water, it'd be an agreement with the Gallery Acres West. And then of course, city would provide water and then a septic system, you know, which has been done before. We've had to do that where there's not water and where there's not sewer close. But then at some point it will be close. And then there has to be that language and discussion. What happens when it is close enough? You know, and the cost of the hooking up. And so I think those are really the biggies. We're kind of just wanting to, and I understand that it's complicated, but it's not impossible. We just need to kind of know how the council's leaning so we can keep the conversations going.
Maybe I could.
Go ahead, Steve.
Maybe I'm saying this a little different way than John, but I guess I'm not in favor or inclined to want to be the developer, partial part of the development of the items that you've talked about. I just don't see that financially we have the wherewithal to do that and whether we should do it actually. So when it comes to sewer and streets and that kind of stuff, I don't think we want to share in that or we want to have anything to do with those kind of development costs.
Steve, I'd say you took the words out of my mouth with that. So from an annexation standpoint, I'm not concerned with the annexation of it. I do understand there would be costs of additional snow clearing and there would be some costs there with it.
Yeah.
As the town continues to grow, I feel we'll be going out there anyway. I do feel like this could be a great addition to the community with it as far as water and sewer with that. I don't think it would be feasible to run a sewer line or a cost. It would make most sense from a cost standpoint. So I wouldn't be opposed to having a septic system now, but I would definitely want a developer's agreement that stated when sewer is out there that property will be connected to city sewer at that property's cost. I don't I don't feel the city should take on any of these costs for it. It's not fair, it's not right to our taxpayers with that, but if it allows us to get this going now, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But knowing that once sewer is out that far, that the property needs to be on the city sewer with it, not have a bunch of septic systems in town. From a water standpoint, hooking up to Gallery Acres, that this Cammy said that would be another option or another agreement that is out there. But if the city owned the line at that point, it would just naturally connect to the city water, but getting that water across 382 to that property, again, that's not something that the city should be responsible for, the cost or anything with that. I don't know if we'd be open to the cost analysis of a well on that property versus running a line where would follow the same thing as septic, where once the city owns it.
There's too much risk of contamination with a well, just too close, because we talked about that. I feel like we've got some good direction. It sounds like there is some flexibility on the street versus the driveway, but you would need to see some numbers and costs. Sounds like that, as far as water and sewer, again, need to see, the burden is on the project to come and bring that information to council and to, basically justify why they'd be asking for some allowances. And that's not unreasonable. We just wanted to make sure you're open to those conversations and find out kind of where your flexibility was and was not before we ventured down that path. I think we got some good direction. Do you feel?
Yes, so the options for the sanitary would be either a small pump station that they would pump back to city sewer, a septic, or run sanitary out there. So those are the three we'll want them to give us cost estimates on. Once we figure out the difference in the cost and the feasibility, how it impacts our project, that'll be good information to help make that decision. The issue with the water is that this is a relatively large gathering space and we need to have fire protection. It has to be sprinkled. That Gallery Acre line, that may or may not have enough capacity, so that's something they'll have to evaluate as well. That would also require us to approve an agreement through Gallery Acre. We've talked about that, it hasn't been done yet, but the framework is set up, and this would likely be one of the first that would have that move forward. And this would be unique because the property, if we annex, would be in city limits, but we connect a water line outside of city limits, the city provides the water too. So a little bit different situation than say a development that's further out there that has issues that is looking to have.
No real formal vote tonight, Mayor, we really just needed some, Gallery Acres asked to have some, time in front of the council to just kind of look at their concept so that we can, we all knew which direction to keep moving.
Any other comments or questions? Thanks for coming in.
Yes, appreciate the discussion.
That takes us to item 16, the well number 3 repairs.
I reported at the last council meeting that well 3 was down. We at that time didn't really know the details. Until these specialists, Dave Richards is here as well as Dave Scheckinger. We received a report from Northway. And we have turned this into insurance. It's not unsimilar to what happened with well 4. It just didn't get as devastating as well 4 yet. So really, I'm losing my voice, whichever Dave wants to talk.
I just, as a utility specialist, I want to fix as fast as possible. Kind of leave this normal.
So I did stop out and talk with Northway as they were pulling the well, took a look at it to get an idea as to what the issues were. Some of the expense on here was just to reset the well, for them to show up, to pull it, to televise and whatnot. That's the basic cost that we've already incurred. So we really don't have much choice on that. We did ask them to look into it, so that cost is due to them. We have some iron bacteria that has grown in that well, and typically it's a naturally occurring bacteria in a low oxygen environment. It just tends to grow over time. It's been quite a while since we've done anything with that well, and it's probably to the point where, given the magnitude of the iron bacteria that's in there, and it's not a health concern, it's just, it can create some fouling in the pumping, it goes into the tank and then through the filters, and it just makes the treatment process more difficult. It would be good at this point, when we have it pulled and we have a contractor on site, to proceed with that treatment to try to reduce that iron bacteria. And there's obviously a cost for that, a significant cost, about $38,000. But it's something that we've had to do on the other wells when we first drilled them, is do some proactive treatment to try to prevent that from growing too quickly. The other information on here is to rehab the motor in the pump. While we have it out, it's got quite a bit of runtime on it. It just makes sense to go through and rebuild that stuff, but we can put it back in there. So I would suggest that we do that as well. And then the material that they used on the pipe that is between the wellhead and the pump, that's about 210 feet of material, and it was what was called Certalock. So it's a PVC pipe. You put the joints together, and there's a groove in the pipe, and there's a small hole in the bell, and push a tube through there. It looks like a small plastic straw that's solid. We push that through, and that keeps it from coming apart. That was a solution that well drillers tried about 15, 20 years ago, because they were having problems with metal pipe with the threaded joints deteriorating quickly. So they thought if they could use the plastic pipe with that restrained joint, that would work well. We found that hasn't been the best solution. Well, 4, as you know, had some problems. This one's had some issues. A number of others in the area that tried that have had similar results. So recommend not putting that stuff back in and going with a different drop pipe. And that's the galvanized drop pipe that they have listed here. That's about $8,085. And then there's the electrical cable that goes with the pump, and check valves and some other things that are necessary for the well. All of that adds up too. So we've got about $21,724 for the rehab of the equipment. And then we've got the money in there for dealing with the bacteria as well, and then the mobilization costs. So that's what they've laid out, all of it. I talked with Scott before he left. I asked him, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that's money well spent in order to get a well that's going to operate for quite a while, given that you've worked with this for a number of years, over 20 years? And he responded that he thought that this would give the city a good functioning well for years to come, and it would be worth the investment. And I agree with him that these things should be done. Dave, I don't know what your thoughts are, but
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we want to put that plastic pipe back in there, because it has a tendency to fail. And if it fails in 3 years, we're right back here where we started from. As far as cleaning the well, it doesn't make any sense not to do it when we have the well open. It's expensive, but like Scott said, for years to come, we don't want to play with that well.
Don't have any disagreement with anything that was said. We have a funding source identified.
Our funding source in this emergency would be to use the capital improvement levy. We've got a pretty good balance there that we're holding for water tower repairs. It's just it's not the long-term solution, but it's the short-term solution as we have a little more time to figure it out. This, the well's currently down. We need to get it functioning, and they need a yes or a no. So that is what I guarantee. I can guarantee that we can use that money now, but if we have an opportunity to use other monies, I'll just need a little more time to figure that out. But we know we can use that. We can legally use that. It's funds that are available, and it at least gives us the ability to give Northway a green light.
I'll move to approve the estimate for well number 3 repairs.
Second.
Duncan.
Yes.
Farley, yes. Gabriel.
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
Whitehead.
Yes.
Takes us to item 17, resolution 2514, the fiscal year 26 budget, setting property tax levy public hearing. Kim?
This is the new process that we began last year where we set the property tax levy hearing. This is set for April 2nd. As you recall, last year, this has to be a standalone meeting, no other items on the agenda. Has to be open for at least 15 minutes. And then this is a regular meeting night, so then we'd follow up this special meeting with our regular meeting. Then this also coincides with the notice that people get in the mail. That's the new process associated. So on that mailing, it'll announce that there is a public hearing on April 2nd at 5:30 here. That's what this is doing. It's setting the public hearing formally for the property tax levy hearing.
So with that, we would have public hearing at least from 5:30 to 5:45.
Yes,
And then city council meeting to follow.
and the city council meeting to follow. Yep.
I will move to approve resolution 2514.
I'll second.
Duncan?
Yes.
Farland?
Yes.
Gabriel?
Yeah.
Kramer?
Yes.
Whitehead?
Yes.
Takes us down to other business, page 18, council committee reports. It's like utilities, utility forgiveness.
Yeah, the committee approved one utility forgiveness for a leaking pipe in a crawl space. It's about all the activity we've had there.
From a personnel, been conducting the interviews for the public works director, with more coming up. Great turnout from an application standpoint on that. So exciting to see just how many people are excited or want to join the city staff here. It looks like the other one that has an update, just the city school next meeting.
Still waiting for that to, get passed along. I did want to let the council know that I just got the draft for the new community center lease. And they are proposing a 2-year lease through March of 2027. And I'll run that through the committee and then we'll have it on the agenda for the next meeting for approval.
City clerk report, Susan, anything? Cammy, city
I just
administrator?
wanted to let council know there is no planning and zoning meeting this month. There was no items submitted, so no P and Z.
Council comments? Mayor comments, now that we have Dave and Chris in the room, appreciate just, while we are searching for the next public works director, and just all the additional efforts and on-call time and everything that you guys are doing. I relay the message to the rest of the guys too, but appreciate everybody stepping up with that and excited to go through the process. So appreciate everything.
Pretty new blue phone.
You must be on call.
Might as well start with me.
With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Sorry.
All right, Duncan?
Yes.
I guess, Farley,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yeah.
Kramer,
Yes.
Whitehead.
No, just kidding.
I don't know where I was
Yes.
going with that.
Good night.
Got excited.
I got really.